get him. Dash in, Duncan.
ReCore, not a game for everyone. Let's start off there. This is the type of game that doesn't really feel like it exists anymore this decade. Almost like something that came straight from the late 90s, early 2000s. It's a 3D open world platformer collectathon with some light combat to it. Now, I came up with a phrase that should instantly turn off some people of the game before we get into the details here, or it might be super appealing to other people similar to myself. It was kind of refreshing to play a game like this, although not perfect. But here we go. ReCore is one of the best GameCube games ever made. Yes, this is a game where gameplay is the key here. Storytelling is a minimum and collecting junk is at an all-time maximum. So I'm going to put this bluntly. The only point to this game is collecting these prismatic cores. That is the game. You're going to want to try to get as many as you possibly can. How do you get more? Well, you have to open these dungeons, which require a certain amount of these prismatic cores, and then you go and complete these little death gauntlets of platforming or some combat sections. And this is the game. I mean, some people might have problems with that. I didn't mind because I like gameplay. But let me just show you right now. This is the game. You do this for the whole game.
Up and away!
So if none of that looked appealing to you or something you're not into, just this isn't a game for you. You're doing that. You're doing increasingly more difficult platforming mazes and doing some pretty basic combat.
Turn up the heat.
So now let's get into the details now that I have my disclaimer out of the way, but I feel like that was very important specifically with this game to have the correct expectations going into what you're buying, what you're going to be doing. So first off, my favorite thing in the game, the controls. This is a super gameplay-y game. It's super tight with the 3D platforming. This might actually be the best 3D platforming control I've ever experienced. You can pull off some of these just crazy platforming with no problem at all, where other games that would be a nightmare. So if you like gameplay, this is for you. If you're expecting much else, maybe not. So the other element to the game is the combat, where it has this 4-color system to your gun, where you're gonna want to match the color of your gun to the enemy you're facing. So if the enemy's red, you want to turn your gun to the red mode. If they're yellow, turn it to yellow. Pretty basic. And it has a lock-on system similar to Metroid Prime. This is not a third-person shooter. You lock on, the game aims for you, and you shoot. It's more about your own personal movement, dodging, and commanding your bot. So you can have up to 2 bots out with you at one time. They each have certain abilities during combat. They each have a ability that helps you get around the environments or open up areas. Now what's annoying about that is there's 4 total bots, but you can only bring 2 with you, which is odd. So you will come across areas where you're like, well, I just don't have the tool for the job on me. It's back home in the toolbox, so I guess I'll go back home and come back. So who would have thought ReCore had a light fishing element? Yes, you can pull the cores straight out of the enemies once their health gets low enough, and it feels similar to a light fishing minigame where you have to adjust the tension on your line, and if you pull too hard it's going to break. But the reason why you're doing that is if you take their cores, you can use those cores to level up your bots back at your base. So you can dump the points into whatever stat you want, And then there's also a light crafting system where you can outfit your bots with different gear that have different stats. I mean, it started off pretty cool with the crafting, and then I kind of stopped using it towards that last half of the game because the combat's really not difficult enough to require you to always be having the correct gear on your bots. So you're going to be running around the desert looking for cores, doing some combat, doing some jumping puzzles. But let's get into the things that I had some problems with, which there are a few. So I feel like I did a pretty good job at getting enough cores throughout the game. I usually 100% at each one of the dungeons before I moved on to the next, because I could tell that you're going to get to a part where the game says, hey, you need this amount of cores to beat the game. I knew that was coming. So I didn't have any problem with having enough cores at the end of the game. I had a problem with my character's actual level being too low, which added some not fun hours to the game. So I had to just go out and just farm enemies in order to be allowed to proceed in the final dungeon, even though I had plenty of cores. So wasn't a huge fan of that. That could have knocked about an hour and a half off my play time if there wasn't that tediousness at the end. Now, I didn't 100% the game, and I really have no desire to. I played enough. It took me about 11 hours. Another odd thing across those 11 hours, see this part where it says quest at the bottom? Yeah, I found none. That never got used. I don't know if that was me or the game, but I beat the whole game and never saw this part of the menu used. So, you know, take that as you would. I don't know if that's in the game or not. Didn't appear that it was. Another odd thing, so you come across these areas that are clearly not finished. And it's odd because I've never seen this in a game before, where it has collectibles placed in the environment like it's an almost done environment, but the last second they couldn't get it done, and they just put this muck in front of it and made it inaccessible. So I've never seen a game so blatantly say hey, we were rushed and couldn't complete this, don't go here. So overall, I think those are the only complaints I had. I mean, it's a rushed game. That's probably the biggest downfall of the game, is there's not a ton of variety. It was clearly rushed. There's things that don't exist where they should exist, and there's just not a whole lot to it, even though the gameplay is fun. But I just so happen to be a person where gameplay is king, so I managed to have enough fun to beat the game, because I don't beat games that I don't enjoy. So as you can see, ReCore is far from a perfect game. It was rushed, and I hope if there's a sequel they just have the time to make the game what they wanted it to be, which you can tell they wanted more from it. They wanted more time to add more variety, more systems to the game. But I think they were just rushed, so although I still enjoyed it, it is the bare minimum of a good game. Like the absolute bottom barrel of good, which to me is a 7 out of 10. ReCore is, I think, maybe the perfect 7 out of 10. Am I going to think about it, 6 months from now? No. So, ReCore. That's my review. This is Deadite from Boomstick Gaming. Thanks for watching.